Oh, thank you. Okay, sorry. So I never told you it was. I told myself it was 6:30 and other people.
I just told myself 6:30, and then I remember it's 6
Oh,
o'clock.
thank you. I just texted you, actually. Ready? All right, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is call to order the Teaching and Learning Committee, the Board of Education. Present in attendance is myself, Committee Chair Joseph Kalovic. Present live is, and in person is Ms. Christine Baptiste Perez. Online, we got Mr. Joe Lombard, committee member, and we've got board member, Mr. Albert Benahan. And in attendance, we got Superintendent Testani and various staff members for presentations. First item up on the agenda is the approval of, okay, wait, I got the wrong agenda up.
And it's January 18th.
January 18th, 2022.
So move.
Second.
The errors or omissions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. God, I'm so disorganized. I apologize. Thank you so much. Okay, now we're gonna have a discussion on written out loud. I believe we have a gentleman here to, no? No. Should I perhaps tell him it's possible, since I've confused myself at the time, it may have said 6:30, so let's just, I'll take a motion to table that for the moment. And then if he shows up, we'll pick it back up.
Motion to table until later on in the agenda.
Yeah,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now, discussion of possible action on the Interdistrict Discovery Magnet Operation Plan. I believe Ms. Miller, you're gonna take that
Yes,
away?
I do have a copy of this. So every 10 years, good evening, I'm Sangeeta Bala, principal at Discovery Magnet School. Every 10 years, the interdistrict magnet schools have to apply and revise their operations plan. And we've been working with the State Department for the last year and a half. Of course, I didn't know, so I don't have I have copies for you, but I don't have a visual for you guys, but I do have, I'll leave the copies here with you, and I can also send you guys the final draft version of it, because we want to make sure that everything is, how it's supposed to be. So they had sent us a template, and we have utilized that template throughout the last year and a half to work with making sure, from academics to support staff to, true to the STEAM and STEM themes that is there. So we are presenting it to you so we can have this approved. And if you want to look through it, again, as I said, I will send it to you guys. And we want to make sure that it is running the way it's supposed to be, and everything is in place, from staff members to technology to academics to SEL and all the supports. They also wanted to know about district policies and how we do that. So I do have a big appendix here that has all the documents from the district, and this is our plan.
Okay, do we have any questions? There's a lot of documents. Has anything changed significantly since the initial plan?
Not really. I mean, we have been, our enrollment has been steady. Every year we get close to 2,000 students who want to come to Discovery. Our urban-suburban ratio has been very, steady, again, 70% and 30%. We have a good support staff. We have teachers, so we don't have, we only lose to attrition, or sometimes we do leave to suburban towns. But other than that, our vacancies are very minimal, and our attendance, our academics, everything has been going up and up. So it has only improved as the years have gone, and we have become solid in the community. We have great partnership with all the neighboring and community. Like Sacred Heart is our big partner. So was Discovery Museum, that is now taken over by Sacred Heart. Beardsley Zoo. So we do expose our students to a lot of science, STEM, engineering related programs. In addition to that, we do have all kinds of clubs in our building. So we do robotics, we do enrichment clubs. So it has only enhanced our children's experience. And parents seem to be, we have a big parent support. Our PAC and SGC has been always, over the years, they, as new parents come in, we always approach them. As of today, we have full PAC and SGC, and they are very involved. So again, we are fortunate enough to have a community that is big on student, learning and family commitment.
And how deep is our waiting list?
Our waiting list is so our entry point is only our pre-K. So we take 45 students in our pre-K 3 classrooms, and the rest of them are all on wait list. So the only time we take them in is when somebody leaves. And we do have, what we do is we try to be proactive. So in April, we'll send a letter out to families for whatever reason. If they don't want to come back, we will have that slot open for somebody else. So before the school end, we'll make sure that those slots are filled in. So yes, we do have an intensive wait list from pre-K, kinder, first, second. As we go up in the upper grades, it starts to dwindle down a little bit. So because, you are settled, no fifth, sixth graders would want to come and, be uprooted and come to another school, go to another school unless they really have to, or they think that this is the path they will choose. One of the best part for Discovery is also if you are really interested in STEM, we are the sister, Fairchild Wheeler is the sister school, and they will apply through the lottery, but it's an automatic entrance.
That was the point again. Because my son he's applied every single year since kindergarten. He's gone from 500 on the list to 134, and in the 8th grade he finally got 2 because I guess there was less applicants in the 8th grade.
Yes.
And it's a shame that we did uproot him for his. I know I'm just making a personal point here, but I think it's important to the quality of the school, which we need to strive for all our schools to be these qualities and all our high schools to be the same quality. It has interdistrict Fairchild Wheeler, which is an automatic feeder school, and that's the reason that we uproot in the later grades is to get that guaranteed seat for the quality education. Hopefully that's not the case for everybody, but that's neither here nor there for the subject, but it's just a side note because it's quality of the programming, and we're very happy with our 8th grade.
I think to that note too is there's consistency in the school when it comes to not only staffing, but the students that enter, remain there, and they get embedded in the culture. Now, when we look at a lot of the schools, when we start to tease out the data, and in many of our schools, even some of our schools that are not as high performing, the kids that enter in kindergarten and leave in 8th grade do very well, regardless of the environment of that may be, it's in a different area of town or there's some other things going on. So I think when there's that consistency within the school building, they get accustomed to the environment, the expectations, they do well. So I know we did just a brief, informal look, I want to say about 15 years ago at Bassett, and talking with Terry Carroll at the time when she was assistant superintendent. And many of the kids that entered Bassett in 9th grade had not been in the district more than 3 years prior. So because of the transiency of the population of all our feeders pattern, many of them were new to Bridgeport. And so the ones that had been in Bridgeport for their K-8 years were our top students.
And I want to stay on that note just for a quick second. As far as the breakdown, I see Stratford's our biggest sender, followed by Trumbull. Do all the majority of the students from the outer towns go into Fairchild Wheeler, or do they choose to go back to their home districts at that point?
It all depends.
Yeah.
It all depends. Most of them, so the first year that I was there, that was the first year the 8th graders, we had put this in place because it wasn't, when the school started, the school didn't start at pre-K 8, it started with pre-K first and second, and then they added the grades as they do.
Right.
So the year that I was there, 2013-14, that was the first year, 8th graders, and that was the biggest, I think, parents wanted that, and so we had to go back to the state to have that to put into the charter to ensure, because that was the year that Fairchild Wheeler was new, open, and so we had that. So we had almost 80 to 90% of our students did go to Fairchild Wheeler. But as over the years, they have also, some of them, though they are here, but sometimes they elect to go to technical schools because they realize that, science is not there, but they want to go to technicals. Homeschool, seldom, we do get few, but they also go to Notre Dame and they'll go to, St. Joe's or private schools, but they will also, some of them would go, but not to that percentage. We still, I think our last year's group was at least 60% of our students did go to Fairchild Wheeler.
Awesome, thank you. Ms. Baptiste Perez?
So if a student decides in the 7th grade, for whatever reason, they're not going to return to your school and they're from Stratford, that lottery seat opens up to any one of the districts, so any one of the towns, Bridgeport, Danbury, Eastern, whoever's next on the lottery list?
So the lottery, this is how our lottery looks like. We have lottery by towns. So you will see, so it will open up to, first it will open up to a Stratford student. And if the Stratford student is not there, then because to maintain the ratio of the suburban and urban, we have to make sure that we have enough urban kids. And if we have enough urban kids, we can go to Bridgeport. Like we take 27 or 28 of our pre-K 3s out of 45 or 30, they all come from Bridgeport. We have 2 from each town. We have 7 towns, so 14 kids come from suburbia. The rest of them are all Bridgeport kids at our pre-K 3 level.
Yeah, I don't have any questions at this moment.
And Mr. Lombard?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Benahan, I see your hand up.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you so much. I have a question. This policy, they apply for special needs students, or is going to be different? And my second question is, parents need to read this policy. I know maybe you can have it in Spanish and English. They can translate for another language.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question, Mr. Benahan?
Of course. My first question is this policy apply for the special needs students, or it's going to be something different? And my second question is, I know it's going to be translated in Spanish, or, in Spanish. Can we translate for another language? Is this parent ask for another, another language?
Well,
To clarify, the second question is your policy available in different languages for parents that may not speak English?
We definitely translate it in Spanish and Portuguese because we do have a high Portuguese and Spanish population. So once we are completed with all this and when we put it up on our website, this will be translated into other languages, yes.
We didn't address his first question, I forgot, but that was the second
What was
question.
his-
Inclusive of special education.
It is inclusive of all students, Mr. Banahan, 504 students with special needs, EL students, every student. This policy, this operation plan is basically telling us exactly how school is run, how academics work, how teachers are working with students, what programs, how we are supporting students with, IEPs, what are we doing, students with social emotional needs. So it encompasses everything, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. No more questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Bautista.
Welcome.
Any other questions at this point? At this point, I'll entertain a motion to push this towards a full board, the approval of the Discovery Inter-District Magnet School Operations Plan for presentation to the Connecticut State Department of Education.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda.
thank you, Ms. Bell.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Report of discussion on the latest available assessment data in reading, writing, mathematics, and science. Strategy to support student learning deficits. Big old mouthful, but we get the gist. Mr. Testani,
We'll start with mathematics.
created a PowerPoint, all three of us. We included all the data. So,
Is math up first?
yes,
Okay. Okay.
math, science, and then.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So, there you go. So here's the HMH data, the HMH growth measure assessment. This assessment is done 3 times a year. We did it at the beginning of the year in October, then we just finished it in February, and then we will do it again in June by the end of the year. As you could see, the data, there was an incredible increase in grades 2, 3, right at the beginning there. There was about a 5% increase in grades 4, 9% increase in grade 5, 10% in grade 6, and 3% in grade 7. The data in grade 8 was pretty much stable. We looked to see what is going on, and we looked at the number of standards across all grade levels, because that's a huge impact, as well as how many kids were very much below level. What you'll see in looking at that in-depth data is that as the grades progress, you have kids that were much lower due to many factors. Due to the COVID loss, due to many different factors. We have schools, for example, that move. For example, in grade 2, we have schools that move students 50% from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year. And when looking at those schools, we'll see that the students were maybe 1 grade level below. And so it was much easier to move them than other schools that were much further down. Grades 7 and 8, as you can see, increased the least, and we're looking deeply at those grades. One of the biggest issues we're having in those grades is actually the recruitment and retention of teachers. That's huge in those grade levels, and it's not only us; it's across the entire state of Connecticut. We have been lucky in the sense that out of 31 teachers, we've been able to maintain about 2/3 or a little more than 2/3 of our population. But yet we have big schools that have had a lot of transiency in their teachers. So that has been a big factor here. The fact that we have to train them, that we have to, some of them are DSAP teachers that they have durational certificates. And so we have to train them. We have to teach them how to teach. And that has been taking a lot of time and a lot of effort. We have done what we can with what we have. We are looking, for example, at using some of our resources in terms of lead teachers to ensure that those teachers are being helped throughout, not only them, but also all the other teachers, and looking at data. We're looking at using the professional development that we have purchased from HMH. For example, we purchased virtual sessions that we're putting in place for specifically those teachers and other teachers that are new to our district, as well as the half-day coaching sessions. We want to be sure that we have some sessions during the month of February and March and April where a coach will come out and we'll meet and basically showcase how to do different things with the program that we have purchased. These have been grades that we have been focusing on throughout, but unfortunately, because of all that, the loss of teachers, we have had, big turnover in those grades. One thing that you see here is K1.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. K1 is not shown here, and part of the reason why is because we went from using the iReady program to this new program. We have not implemented K1 as of yet, and in looking at K and 1 specifically, we're using what we learned from those grades, and one of the things is that it's very difficult for them to take assessments in the computer. We want to do a paper pencil assessment for those kids. Our K1, we want to do something in looking at the research out there. A lot of the research points out that in K1, it's best to assess those students as an interview. And so we want to do that, and we're piloting. We will be piloting a new assessment. We're actually working on that right now. We have 6 schools that we're doing that, and it's called Acadians. And I think it will make a big difference, especially in K1, because we always got a lot of nice data in terms of iReady, but we always wonder to what extent was that data true to the performance of students. So in this sense, we are going to have a teacher that will be working directly with the students. And at the same time, that teacher will listen and will see those weaknesses that those students have so that they could quickly implement what they learn on top of the fact that they will have the data. One couple of last points about this is, as I said, part of my job is to ensure that our teachers have the support that they have, and we have Dr. Rosa with us. He's on a part-time basis, but part of his job is to support the 7th and 8th grade level as well as some of those new high school teachers. And so, his job is to go out there and find out what is going on, what we need. I go out there when I visit schools. I talk to all my teachers. We have meetings during the months to find out, what is it that is needed and provide professional development, just to make sure that they hear that we're listening to them, but at the same time that we're providing things that we're looking at the data that they really need. And one last point is in terms of the lead teachers. The lead teachers, we're utilizing the lead teachers to be model teachers so that anyone could come into their classroom and see all the great things that are going on and how math should be taught. And so also, we want them to be using the best teaching strategies so that they could also support other teachers in that endeavor. So by trying it in their classrooms, they could say, from a first person standpoint, they could basically say, I tried it in my classroom and this is what I saw. And so it's much more powerful than someone else coming out and saying, oh yeah, I heard from so-and-so that this is gonna work. And last but not least, we want them to utilize data to find out what misconceptions, what errors students are making, to see the problems and to be able to pinpoint and diagnose what students need, not only for their students, but for other students in their cadre that they work with. So that's this slide. Do you have any questions? I know I gave a lot. I gave a lot there.
Could you just explain, well, first of all, I'm new to a lot of the acronyms.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Following along. So HMH is just the academic program, or does it stand for something?
Thank you for asking. It's Harcourt, is the company name.
Oh, okay.
I apologize. We use these, so if I say something, please stop me. I want you to understand, please.
No problem. I sure will.
Thank you.
And just again, explain, aside from teachers, because I guess I'm trying to understand why there's a big disparity between elementary and middle school.
Yep.
You have growth in the elementary level, but then it's very limited. And if you think about the opposite of what we're seeing, this is showing 56% of students are at or above grade level for 2nd grade, but that still means 44% are not.
That's right.
And what's alarming is that 8th grade, you see absolutely no growth. And what it means is that the majority of all of our students, that would make it 73%, are not at or above grade level, and they're going into high school.
Right. That's a great question. Let me give you a little bit of the history of what transpired here. For the past 12 years, we have had one textbook that we have used throughout. the curriculum have been used to patch up any little things that were missing from that one textbook. In the past 3 years, we adopted a different textbook to ensure that students, first of all, have a common way of learning, because students are moving from different schools. They're coming to different schools, and we want them to learn in a similar way. At the same time, we wanted to ensure that the curriculum was one for the whole district. It wasn't a patch-up job. It was something that was meaningful and solid. So to answer your question, why are they growing in the lower grades and not in the upper grades? The one thing that you don't see here is to what extent was the beginning point of those students. So for example, in the 7th grade, when we started that year, there were about 1,200 students that were 2 or more grade levels below. By the time we did the second part of the test, we were down to 800 students, 1 grade level below. So there was a growth, but they were still not on level. So though there was growth, they will still not be marked by that bar because they're not on grade level. So we're making gains, but we're not quite there yet. Does that make sense?
I think,
No, I see the optimism. It's just, that's a lot to catch up on.
Yeah.
What you did just give me a timeline, but it lapsed in my head.
That's okay.
In particular with, okay, you said the last 12 years, but there's been growth, and there's been growth over what period? Would you say within the last year?
So last year we implemented 6 through 8.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the first year of that 6 to 8. We had COVID, so we implemented that program at 6 through 8. Now we went down all the way to 2nd grade. The first year of 2nd through 5th, and the second year of 6 through 8.
Okay. So it shows that at least for the elementary, it's more promising because it's catching it early.
Right.
But on the middle school level,
We still got a lot to work.
still a lot to work on.
A lot to work on.
Did you notice that there were any particular schools that didn't reflect this information? So maybe there's a middle school that's actually performing a lot higher at 27% versus another school, middle school, that's 8th grade level is performing significantly. I want to know the disparity amongst the schools, because that's another big factor that I'm trying to consider, because it's easier to lump everybody in Bridgeport together.
Yeah.
But you'll recognize, and I know I like numbers.
I like it.
You'll be able to parse and parcel that certain areas and certain schools are actually performing differently in addition to the program. So I'm curious how that works out.
And that's why I made the mention of those teachers that have been there for a while, because those teachers that have been there for a while tend to have higher scores than those teachers that are fairly new and that are learning the curriculum, or even those that are not certified. So for example, we have schools where the teacher had been there for 10 years, 12 years, and looking at our data, you could definitely see the difference between beginning of the year and middle of the year. They understand the curriculum, they know Common Core, they know exactly the standards that they have to work on. They could open the book and break down the pieces that the students need and go right to town. Well, when you have a brand new teacher, we have to take time to really help them unpack the content. Another thing is, note that 5th grade is sort of that middle. It's where everything pivots. Mm-hmm. And so that's because that grade level is where everything starts to churn. So when we talk about decimals and fractions and percentages, that's 5th grade. And so if they don't have a good understanding there, that catch-up takes a while. That catch-up takes a lot of work, because there are a set of standards that have to be covered at every single grade level. It's not like when we went to school that everything was repetitious. You have money 1st grade, you have money 2nd grade and 3rd grade. Now you don't. Now you have 5th grade, decimals, percentage, fractions. 6th grade is using algebra with those concepts. 7th grade is integers. Every single grade level is something different.
and I also think, as we talked about previously, when the transience of the population in certain schools and at those higher grade levels contributes because they're not with us from kindergarten all the way through. You know, and in the last 2 years, we've gotten an influx of students, not just from all over the world, but from other states as well, that are coming to us. And early indications are many of the students that came from out of state came with IEPs, came with special needs, and came significantly from underperforming. So I think if we tease out our data even further, you'll find that there's a lot of contributing factors besides just teachers and other factors in the upper grades. I mean, this is something that we've looked at. And I remember a previous principal at Luis Munoz Marin had teased out all the students that, because it was an underperforming school, students that were there from kindergarten and the upper grades performed extremely well. So there's a lot of factors into that upper grades. And to his point, it's just going to get worse because most 7-12 math teachers want to teach high school. Mm-hmm. Middle school is not their preference, and it's difficult. It's gotten to the point where one of our charter schools in the city will no longer be going and offering 7th and 8th grade next year because finding those teachers are becoming increasingly more difficult. So K-6 teachers are much easier to find and to retain.
I guess my next question of this, but what about the remedial nature with like the COVID funds? Like it's not just limited to ELA or English, it has to be applied to math too. And then maybe that information that you're saying, maybe not every single factor, but maybe the top 5 or 10 factors should be presented to the board so we can actually consider it. And so we're not looking at a high level, because at a high level view, this is just telling me nothing's changed in the 8th grade and they're failing. And I prefer to have a more detailed review before making that analysis, because what percentage of the 8th graders are new to Bridgeport? What percentage of these 8th graders that are it's flat, so I'm making a generalization, are new to Bridgeport, English language learners, and I also, not to knock people for moving from another state, but also a lot of people coming from different states may arguably have higher academic standards, and where it's actually contributing to growth on the scale. So I don't want to make it seem like everybody new to the Bridgeport schools are bringing down what was already pre-U, maybe a historically failing school system. So I would like to have that information to look at, but I'm not going to ask a million questions.
No, but it's good. And I thank you for that. I skipped 2 slides, I'll come back, but I just wanted you to see, just to your point, this is what we call the IAB, the IAB. And the IABs are, they're assessments, they're small assessments, they're from the Smarter Balance assessment, and they're very short, they're 12 questions. And what we did was we tied that to our curriculum. So when we finish one unit, you could give this assessment to gauge where your students will be in terms of your predictive assessment, the big one, the SBAC, the Smarter Balance.
Yeah.
So if you look at the 8th grade here, you could see how, even though they're 2-3 levels below, how they're producing in terms of our own teaching. So though it's not where we want them to be, because I would love to see that first below at a 10% or 5% and see the above and the at near much higher. You could see that a lot of where what we're teaching is actually paying off because of the way that they're producing in this one assessment. Now, I would love to triangulate the data, to take a look at multiple sets of data in this sense. But this is one example of how we're looking at the 8th grade cohort as well as other grade levels in terms of some of those things that we have been working in terms of our curriculum. Now, the data doesn't end here. So what we do with this is we take lead teachers, and this data is then broken down into questions. Each question, they get a percentage for each question in the class, and they look at what errors students make in those questions. So if it's multiple choice, you could see who picked A, B, C, and by that you could get a sense as to where they are. If they wrote an answer or they typed an answer, you could see what answers they're putting there so that you could make generalizations about where your data, is. And so that's how we use this. And then teachers can, we don't mandate at the district level because it's a lot of testing. But if teacher wants to reuse the assessment and redo it with the students after they have taught similar questions, they're welcome to do that. And we find that a lot of our lead teachers and a lot of the teachers are doing that. They're taking small groups of students and not using the same questions, obviously, because then they're going to know the questions, but teaching those skills and then retesting them to find out how do they do. And you can see in the 8th grade, the data here reflects is much higher on this specific area. This is first and second unit of the year.
Okay.
This was given in November. So that's to your point. Like, where are these kids? Like, how come we haven't moved them? Is our teaching really working with them? I would say yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's going to take time because they're really, really far behind, and we're seeing that some of the efforts that we're doing are really paying off. They're really paying off. It's going to take time for us to see it.
And I'm just concerned for middle school. That was the grade I actually wanted to teach. I wanted to be a middle school math teacher. But I taught high school. No, it's just high school readiness. And the graduation rate for middle school students, knowing that they're so far behind. That's a big turning point, and it can be an indicator. And I wonder how many of our middle school students in 8th grade will graduate and successfully go and graduate from high school on time, knowing that it's good to see growth, but just knowing that those are a factor. And then how can we use the ESSER funds and the funds from the government to make whatever we can do to push them to ensure that they succeed, because that's the vision of the school board.
This is my 6th year, I believe 6th year running the math department. And I could tell you that just the fact that we are purchasing a book for every single one of our kids, the same book is a huge deal. And the second part is not only purchasing it, ensuring that everyone is using it. Just the other day, I was talking to Johnson School principal, and she said to me, it's great when you get a student and they have the content and the knowledge from the units that precede it. It's great to have kids that are coming in that are in a similar level of where other students are in the classroom. For years, we've been saying that we need some kind of structure, some kind of solid way, and it's finally here. The fact that next year we will have K1, K8, everyone is going to be using the same text in the district, one curriculum. It's going to make a difference over time.
No further questions from me.
Okay.
Mr. Lombard.
Yes, thank you. So how does this compare historically with data from previous curriculum and previous years?
Great. In looking at it, it's hard to compare it just because we only had the HMH growth measure assessment for grades 6, 7, and 8 last year. The year before that, we had a totally different assessment. But I could tell you in grades 2, 3, 4, this data is about 10% higher than in previous years. My first 2 years. In grades 5 is very similar. And last year for grades 6, 7, and 8, our starting point was much lower than what we are now. So the end product, the middle of the year, was just a bit higher than what it is now. Let me take that back. This data is a little bit higher. It's about 4 or 5 percentage points higher than what it was last year. But the beginning point was much lower.
Okay, thank you. And for perspective, is the growth within a grade level typically much less in the middle school years in general? From beginning of year to middle of year?
Could you repeat that?
So over the years, typically speaking, is it found that the growth from beginning of year to middle of year is much smaller for the middle school grades than it is for the elementary grades?
Yeah, typically as have been true with many of the assessment that we've had. Yes.
Right. So this kind of falls in line with what you've seen before. Is that correct?
What we've seen before COVID. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Oh, thank you.
The difference in being in looking at it with eyes of someone that really cares about this stuff is we now have a book that we are going to be using throughout. Everyone is going to be using it the same exact way, and our principals are getting the training and the understandings that will help the teachers in ensuring that they're going to be looking at it. So that has not been done before. So that's the difference, and that makes a big difference when you know that someone's watching and ensuring that I'm doing the right thing.
Thank you.
Mr. Benham, any questions?
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Planners. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't have no questions, but I know everybody open your eyes, but I just want to say, Mr. Planner, I don't have no questions for you because you always do an amazing job, great presentation.
I got a couple of questions. If I'm asking a question that's going to be on another slide, feel free to just pass on the question until we get to the slide. This is state assessment or internal assessment?
This is an internal assessment.
Internal assessment. How are we performing on our state assessments?
We haven't taken the SBAC. I believe I did a presentation at the beginning of the year. And right now, after COVID, we were only 8% at or above level. So the data here is showing, a lot better than what we did even after COVID. So we're looking forward to a lot of improvement in that sense.
All right, and then point to the 7th to 8th growth and the slowdown. That's telling because when we looked at data for 9th and 10th grade, we had a lot less performance at those grades, and we had, I can't remember what we were looking at. We were looking at some problems with the 9th and 10th grade where they're not succeeding as much as they can be, and then it picks up again in the 11th and 12th.
Yeah.
And it's the root cause, we're assuming, is right back there in the 7th and 8th grade. That's not meeting the levels. So let me ask something. If
we are planning to address that in 9th and 10th grade.
Yeah, we're going to
this data is reasonably stable throughout time, somewhat. Would that be fair to say, as far as they're still at or above standards?
Yes.
How is it that a metric could say that a student is below standards, and that student be able to pass a class and go on to high school?
I like to look at multiple data points. I don't like to look at just one test because that one test is just one bit in time. It actually gives you a picture of the student. But if you look at this assessment, you look at the interim assessment banks, the IFBs, and you look at how the student is doing in their tests every month or every 2 weeks, however the teachers use their assessment. All that together gives you the whole picture of the kid. And remember that the assessment that the teachers give are assessments that the teachers are looking at the questions, they know what questions are coming in. They probably have been using similar questions where these assessments are, you get what you get. Just like when you take the SAT, you don't know what's coming on the SAT. So to look at multiple assessment points, what I call triangulating the data, is much more effective, and it's the way to do it anyways, than just to look at one data point. This just gives us a picture of you know, one picture of where we are at.
May I chime in?
Sure.
And
Yes.
Mr. Sokolovich, the state of Connecticut provides the schools in the district with what they call the Next Generation Accountability Index. I believe 42% of the elementary index is based on student growth. So when we make decisions about promotion, it's also based on an individual student's growth over time. The accountability index for elementary school measures achievement 32%. So they weight growth of students over time greater than achievement. And that was a fair metric for all children. So even if a child is performing on grade level, there's still an expectation for that child to grow
Right.
over time.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, that's a little good. I don't want to hold our students back, but I'm wondering if social promotion is still a thing, because at some point it'll catch up. I mean, there's a certain level that children are expected to have when they move on to college, and these kinds of supports are not there for them. That's just my question, because it really would do no good to pass a child on, because like we say, from the 8th grade to the 9th grade, the problem is not the 9th grade teachers not teaching up to the level, it's that the 8th grade students aren't prepared for the 9th grade material. And I'm wondering if there's some sort of,
Remedial course of action.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, we are looking, for example, we had a meeting with Donnie and the team. We had a meeting in regards to 7th and 8th grade for next year, and we're looking at doing some quarterly assessments and really looking at our curriculum and specifying, you know, what are the basic competencies that a student must have in that first marking period, that second marking period, that third, so that we have you know, so that first of all, teachers that are coming in brand new, because we have a lot of them, they know exactly the expectation for that. Instead of looking at all these resources and all these papers, they know one sheet of paper, what is exactly expected of you in that first semester, second semester. And the second thing is, how are we going to assess in 10 questions, very simplistic, the growth of those students, not growth, the achievement of those students in those areas. So we're looking at that as one thing. The second thing is definitely what we call MTSS, which is that piece of how we help those students move forward. That extra help that we provide in different times during the day for those students to catch up, and ensuring that schools have, you know, some time either built into their math time or outside of the math time to help those students so that they're prepared for on grade level content. And so ensuring that that's happening. And we started that this year and looking at that because of COVID, you know, one, because we know that we're going to be real far back. But we're going to continue that work on next year to ensure that we call it accelerating, that we are accelerating that instruction, that we're ensuring that they could access that instruction on grade level so that they could show achievement.
That segues nicely into my next question. What we talked about teachers, we talked about textbooks and PDs and all that. What kind of student enrichments are in place to accelerate this?
Excellent. And I know you like that stuff. So one of the things we're working on is what we call performance tasks. And performance tasks are basically questions that can be used as projects to ensure that any student have that enrichment piece and that could access that content in a different way. So these questions are rich questions. They're not just, you know, what is 2 + 4? No, they're in a set of a problem, and they could be accessed, they could be answered and I wish I had a sample here for you so you could see it. It's more about usage of the content rather than the content itself. And so we have started entering those questions. We did 3 sets, and we have piloted already in the schools, and we're gonna have those in our curriculum. The second thing is the new book that we have has 1 project per unit. And so we're training teachers to utilize those projects to enrich their content and to access those students that might need that enrichment factor. And the third thing that we're doing is we're enhancing it through activities. So you have the math meet, you have math Olympics, you have activities like that, which bring that math alive. By day, for example, they do, right now they're doing a statistical project where they use statistics. Some schools are doing the stock market gain. So it brings that math alive, and it brings that enrichment factor throughout.
And have we have any like after school tutoring or?
We do have that as part of ESSER funds and other programs.
Other extended day programs. We're also looking at, to your point, students that are entering high school. We're making systemic changes in a couple of ways. At the elementary, middle school level, looking at scheduling. And at the high school level, looking at incorporating new courses that will meet the kids where they are, rather than put them in a course where we're setting them up for failure, so that they can get the skill set to build upon, to be able to take those classes later on in their high school careers and be successful, so that when they do graduate, they are going to be ready, whether they want to attend college or whether they want to, go into a trade or go on to a different pathway for career. But right now, and we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, it was something that was always troublesome to me, is that all students entered 9th grade went into Algebra 1. Yeah. It has been the most failed class in the Bridgeport public schools for over a decade. Regardless if you were prepared or not, kids were put into a class, so now we are going to make sure kids that need some help in preparing in that first semester in high school, they'll be able to get a class that will prepare them to be able to then catapult into Algebra 1 in the second semester.
And does that affect the credit hours any, or
No.
slow down any progress?
No.
Nope. Okay, so that's good.
This is just, there are some systemic things that as a team we've been addressing. It's just that it's been a long time, and a lot of things have gone in a million different directions. Schools have been allowed to do different things based on whether they received grant funding. They had the autonomy to make changes. We found in schools where principals had the autonomy to trade off an art teacher or a music teacher for a different area teacher that then did not provide those children with the same experience in their school as kids in other schools in the district. So really putting a lot of effort to systemically make this a school system and not individualized rogue.
Yeah.
I don't know what other way to say it, but I think we've made a lot of growth and changes, and we still have a lot to do, but we're building each and every year so that the kids can get the best educational experience that they deserve.
Awesome, thank you.
Just one more point on that data that we saw before. For the first 5 years, we had Greg Tang doing workshops in grades K through 5. And so that content is permeating through that data. Greg Tang is a guru in mathematics, and we had a grant for the last 5 years to bring him on board and to showcase how to do math pictorially and how to do math more concretely, which is something extremely important as we enter Common Core, especially in the lower grades. If they don't have that concrete, that knowledge, that understanding, when they get to fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, and they see all that content, they're not going to understand it or be able to do anything with it. So that is, you could see it clearly and vividly there. This is the high school. Just moving on to this, and I know I skipped a couple of slides, but this is an important one because we're working directly with this one. And to Mr. Testani's point, one of the things we're looking at is, number one, we did not have a system for tracking that data from 8th grade to 9th grade to 10th grade to 11th grade. The PSAT was only given in the fall and in the spring, and that's the only data they had through high school. So now we're going to have a PSAT given now for the first time in 8th grade, now at the end in March, in 9th grade, also in March, and then they'll take a 10th grade also PSAT. They'll take PSAT in the fall of the 11th grade, and then they'll take the SAT in the 11th grade in the spring. And so we'll have that data to compare and to see the 3 domains of the SAT and to be able to know more of where the kids are at so that the students are at, so we could follow them through. And so that's an important factor.
Yeah, and as you're aware, we've also now provided access in the grades 6, 7, and 8 for Khan Academy.
Yeah.
That will also align with the work that with the College Board all the way through till they take their SATs in their spring of junior year and then in their senior year. So we're creating a systemic way to provide additional support for students. And the students here, particularly during the pandemic, there was a built-in period in the morning because here at Central High School, so kids, when they arrived off the bus, could go right to class, and teachers came in early, and they utilized Khan Academy for the first 30 minutes, that early time before, and the data has shown tremendous growth with the implementation of that 30 minutes every day. So.
We looked also at different schools are doing a lot of different things in high school to ensure that students get that support that they need. For example, at Basic High School, they're using a program called Edgenuity, 25 minutes on every Wednesday. Everybody drops everything. First 25 minutes of that Wednesday, they work on Edgenuity in math and science and reading to ensure that that we're providing that assistance. And Edgenuity, what it does is it provides that support.
It's individualized.
Individualized,
so
yeah.
Kids take an assessment and then start working based on the assessment and your performance there. So Dr. Ayola has doubled down in that as part of his school improvement grant funding.
Other schools like BMA, for example, they're having tutoring. BMA has tutoring during school as well as after school, and they support those students that are behind in order to ensure that they're catching up on their studies in those 2 areas. So another area that we're looking at, and we're going to be meeting about it tomorrow, in fact, we have a meeting, is to ensure, because now we're semester-based. So how do we ensure that students have math about the continuum of the 3 years? That's a big deal, because if you only have to take 3 maths or 4 maths throughout and you're semester-based, freshman and sophomore year, if you take math all 4 semesters, you're done with the math. So when you're taking the SAT as a junior, you haven't had math for about 5 or 6 months before you take the SAT. So that's a big deal, because if you don't use it, you're going to forget. And so we're looking at spreading the math throughout. How do we do that throughout? Also including the pre-algebra, because a lot of students really are going to need that. If you saw it, right? The 8th grade students that are almost catching up, they're going to need that extra support in pre-algebra, which many districts don't have. But I think that, I agree with the team that we truly need that in our district.
Any questions on this?
No. Just a comment of just how radically different it is from New York. We had continuous testing all throughout So there wasn't a grade level where we didn't have math. Math was all the way till 12th grade. And it was tested by the state. So it's just interesting to hear the different standards. I do have a quick question. The Ingenuity program offered at Bassick, is that something where students can like access at home, or is it only at school?
No, it's web-based, yes.
Web-based, yeah.
Is there any kind of incentives or to encourage students to practice that on their downtime?
Yes,
or
yes.
they're doing that?
It's fairly new. They just got the grant funding this past fall. So it's fairly new in the implementation process, but it is being, pushed and encouraged. And, it's also being used in a credit recovery mode too for students that need to recover credit. So it really incentivizes kids to put in the time, especially kids that may have failed a class in the past and would like to get back on time to graduate. So.
Then just had a question regarding, you mentioned, Mr. Testani, that there's going to be reviewing by scheduling, changing the schedule. Is it going to be a longer day?
No, just how to utilize time more effectively during the course of the school day. Utilizing Power School where possible in the elementary schools. A lot of times schools are just repeating the same schedule year after year after year and not really looking at the needs of the students in the building and making adjustments. Like we do at the high school, we create a new master schedule yearly to meet the needs and the demands and the requests of students based on their interests and based on their course selections. We're also looking at utilizing time much more wisely at the elementary school level.
Yeah.
Mr. Lombard?
Thank you. Put my hand down. All right. So, Mr. Planas, so thank you for the presentation. And as you said, there's so much more data behind the data, and you can triangulate it and look at it different ways. And there's only so much we could talk about tonight. What I'm going to ask you for, just to walk away as a layperson, although I was a middle school math teacher, public school math teacher, but I was certified in Connecticut. But aside from that, a little toot for myself, but is to walk away as a layperson. What would you say, and even Mr. Testani, if you would want to chime in as well, the state of affairs today of our district in mathematics, K through 12, in comparison to where we've been, and in comparison to the other districts who are similar to us, how are we doing? Just not looking at all the stats and the programs, but like maybe a couple of sentences. I would appreciate that to walk away from.
Yes, yeah. You know what? We were on a roll for the past before COVID. We were growing fairly well. Our growth was showing good data, and then COVID happened, and we regressed to exactly where we were 5 years before. And so now what we're doing is we're catching up. And so if you ask me how are we doing right now, I think we're in a good path. We're in a good path. I think we're going to make growth much faster than before because we have people at the lower grades that know the content. We have materials that are going to support that. We have structures that we're putting together in terms of everyone sort of doing the same thing so that the mobility factor becomes there as well as the extra help that students need. We have technology, which honestly before COVID we did not have. We didn't have one-to-one technology before. We have programs like Khan Academy and others that could help us in moving that forward. So we are much better now equipped in order to narrow that gap much faster. So I'm an optimist. I feel that our students are hard workers. And when I look into the classrooms, I see teachers working hard and doing all they can to support their kids.
And just to add, I think compared to, like you said, other districts in our DIRG, I think we are in a better situation. I think I think it's optimistic, as Johannes mentioned, but we have a heck of a lot of work to do. A ton of work, because this is not acceptable. But we are on the right path, and I think we'll continue to see that growth. But there's also been a shift, as Dr. Jenkins mentioned and Mr. Planas. For many, many years, we were looking at students that hit a certain mark or above. Growth was not the way we looked at student data. And unfortunately, we spent a lot of time trying to get certain kids, as they called them, the cusp kids. And that mentality now, it took a while, but I think now our administration, our teachers understand the importance of growth, whether you're a student that is low performing and grows over the course of a year. But we have an obligation, as Dr. Jenkins mentioned, to make sure our high achievers continue to grow so that they hit their fullest potential. And we were kind of, I don't want to use the word neglect, but we weren't focused so much on our students in the lower achieving students or the higher achieving students for a long time, because we were trying to get this middle group above a certain level so that we would stay off lists and all these other things that, you know, the state imposed on you. So I think this shift to growth at the state level has really given us now a better idea that we need to focus on all kids, whether they're low performing, middle performing, or high performing. As long as everyone is growing over time, we may not all get to the same place, but we'll all get to a place where our kids can be successful in life. And like I said, we have a heck of a lot of work to do, but I feel good with the team that we have and the systems that we're putting in place to help kids.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Lombard, I just wanted to elaborate. We are using the ESSER funding to implement PSAT in grade 8, 9, 10, and 11, which did Tito mention?
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to say that that's a strategy that other districts with a similar demographic has employed and has seen great success. So we can look at students' progress. So initially, we only administered in 11th grade. So we will have a trajectory.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I you know, like I said when I first asked this question, the data is endless, and I appreciate the data. I mean, I work with that. So, but I think hearing from our experts in our district, the superintendent and his cabinet, is important that we get a sense of where things are as well. So I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Mr. Benahan, do you have any questions?
No question for now. Everything was very clear for me. Thank you.
Proceed.
I'm all set.
You're all set?
I mean, I have other,
Science, isn't it?
I have other slides, but basically I already covered, the content in those slides, and basically what we're doing, what our strategies are, and I set them throughout. There's nothing other.
Oh, I guess you're free to go.
I'll stay. I hang out.
Ciao, bello.
Thank you.
Thank you for explaining everything.
All right. You want to wait till Mr. Sokol?
Yes, I will wait for Mr.
Sokol.
He likes science. Like science and math. Love that.
Oh, yeah, on my end, it's just a continuous PDF, so I'm like, next slide.
MTSS, multi.
You waited for science till you got back.
Oh,
It's the new RTI,
okay. No, but what's the old RTI? What is it?
response to intervention. That's in New York. We use RTI.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate the time to present on behalf of science. The irony isn't lost on me, but we have very little data for NGSS-related science, unfortunately. So I don't know if I'll be going on as long as my colleague here, but certainly share some strategies and the optimism that my colleagues have. So there is only 1 year of publicly available data. It's a 2018-2019 school year. There was no NGSS testing as a result of COVID in the 2019-2020 school year. We did administer the NGSS assessment. We have local results available to us for the 2021 ending school year. Unfortunately, the quantitative data is minimal, but I'm glad to be here to share kind of what I've been doing in my role. Just a year and a half or so in, and I also run the aquaculture school, so there's been lots to do there, but it's been a good slow build, as I'll kind of show. Again, there's less quantitative data here relative to my colleagues. But the data does report out on which strands within NGSS that our students are strong and weak. And it really gives a plus or a minus sign. You'll see a slide shortly. We've used some of that data to kind of guide our work. We've got two teams. One's a leadership team that I've started, and these exist kind of both on our platform, Microsoft Teams, but also as kind of a team of educators. And so that is a group of leaders kind of that represents different grade bands. Then I also have a team that's got over 240 people on it that is of anyone really who teaches science, so all of our elementary school teachers, as well as the dedicated science teachers at 7 through 12. These are the 2 years of results for Bridgeport Public Schools. And I don't like this slide because I wish these numbers were better. We did see a little bit of a drop from 20%. Level 3 and 4 are the good levels, if you will, so meets and achieves the standards or exceeds. Level 2 and 1 are approaching and does not meet, respectively. So, as I think everyone in the room knows, we do have a lot of work to do with science at all levels, and the breakdown between 5, 8, and 11 look pretty similar. The publicly available state data for the 2021 ending school year is not available, but I'm going to imagine there are similar COVID regression statistics that we'll see at the state level. Our strengths are in the physical science strands, and those are the PS 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are all the NGSS strands that are here. PS standing for physical science, LS for life science, and ES for earth science systems. And so I did want to talk about our strengths because we have a tremendous group of science educators within Bridgeport Public Schools. They are excited to have some kind of attention and focus on the sciences. And they, again, especially the teacher leader group that I've got, extremely passionate, again, from our high school levels. I've got a 4th grade teacher who is just all about teaching science, as well as some at the middle school. They jump at the opportunity to share with each other, which I really appreciate. And they've done that throughout the school year. Again, leveraging that leadership team that I've kind of started has been good on that front. And then I was able to present to our administrative body on election day regarding science and just kind of a renewed focus on NGSS, explaining some of the components of NGSS to them. And again, there's a kind of a renewed excitement that I feel around science. This wasn't in the slide because this kind of came after, but we were, just a quick shout out. I had a great time. Last few days I've been going around the city. We were able to acquire plaques for our science fair winners at the local level. So I guess a quick shout out to Sarah Ribeiro from Multicultural. She was one of our first place winners, so she's got a plaque and a gift card coming. The others have been distributed, so I will get to Multicultural hopefully tomorrow. And then what I can share as well, again, kind of recent news that didn't make the slide here, but 3 Winthrop students have made finalists at the state level for the science fair. And so they had their interviews and are still kind of alive to keep going. But the recognition for Bridgeport Public Schools, and it was a great moment. I was able to go and deliver those awards to those kids, kind of congratulate them, and share that success in the classrooms, which was really, really special. So,
And to also add, I know you've been working extremely hard and will be at the next month's meeting presenting new curriculum for science to the Teaching and Learning Committee that Mr. Henry and his team have worked extremely hard and vetted, and I think we have come up and selected a program that will really meet the needs of our students in the district. So we're excited about that So it's, through his leadership, we see the science department really moving forward and transform from where it was.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I'm excited for the next time I'm in front of you all, and I can share kind of some of the details of what we're going to propose, again, with your approval for science. So I've mentioned some of these, but these are the strategies for improvements. We've got a district leadership team. We met in the summer of 2021 to begin moving science in a positive direction. That work resulted in really an honest kind of closed door session, if you will, of what it is that's working and what's not within Bridgeport Public Schools. And the result of that was that our K-5 learners need more science education. The data kind of shows that as well. And we also, as a science body, do thoroughly believe that if we get kids involved at a K-5 level, especially with science and the ideas behind science, with a good curriculum, a good map and a product that we'll discuss at the next meeting, but that has a good outline and a progression from one grade to the next. By the time they do get to our science dedicated 7th and 8th teachers, they will be a lot more equipped, a lot more excited to jump in and learn there. And again, we test results will ideally, at the end of all of this, show the positive growth. But there's good energy and excitement kind of in the department at the moment. So what we decided to is that we wanted to hand K-5 teachers something on the first day of school so that they had something to go back to their classroom to feel some support from the district regarding science. So we were able to, with the limited time that we had, create at least one unit per grade level at K-5. And so we were able to distribute that to all of our science teachers upon returning for this current school year. Again, I talked about leveraging the science leadership team. They are the local experts. They have been teaching science to Bridgeport Public School children for quite some time. A lot of them are, again, very seasoned and very dedicated. So, and we did create, again, a team leveraging some of the technology that we had to rely on for so long, but have become pretty familiar with. That is proven to be just even a great place to ask questions. Sixth grade science teacher can throw it out on our team, and it gets picked up and answered pretty quickly. So it's good kind of collaborative environment that we're building. So we did present professional development through that leadership team. We had grade band specific professional development. We had an NGSS 101 and 201 for various levels of understanding there. The NGSS PD that I presented to the administration body on election day, highlighting what to look for in their science classroom so that when they go back, they can hopefully see some of the quality education in place. We did we have an interim assessment through NGSS that we did administer this year. And what we decided is that our area of weakness, which across the board, I apologize, is ESS 2. That's the second Earth Science standard. So that data is available, but it doesn't necessarily highlight any growth relative to the prior year. But what I can tell you is at the school level, there are schools that successfully, the average out of 11 questions was 9 correct. So I am optimistic when we get a kind of the balcony view of this, if you will, that this data will, we'll do better kind of honing in on this weakness. Further things that we've done as a district to support science, we have kits that are now in all of our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade schools. Those are from iQuest. That was upon taking the role as a science director, one of the biggest challenges our teachers had was trying to implement the iQuest curriculum. There's a great digital package that we have, but without the kits that paired with them. And so thankful to all involved, we were able to get that into the classrooms in September. And so I've seen successful implementation of those kits. We've provided training for our teachers from the company that provides those specific to kit implementation, knowing that our teachers have been without for quite some time. We are looking to purchase the workbooks for our K-5 learners for next school year. So at K-5 level, there will be a tangible workbook for all of our learners, again, seeing that they often learn best that way. And then since we're kind of at the grade bands, 9, 12, you'll be hearing, I think, from me and hopefully some others in the room, but mainly me regarding that adoption. We've worked with this leadership team to vet these products. I don't want to go too much into that presentation here, but I'll gladly share, the results of that work and kind of the vetting of those different partners, if you will. And then excited for next school year for Mr. Planis and I have already been, Dr. Planis and I have already been discussing, I've already been discussing how to best utilize these math science lead teachers. And just excited that we'll have sort of a level of teacher leaders that will, be able to kind of carry out some of the PD, et cetera, at the school level. So, and that, I believe, concludes my piece, but happy to hear any questions from anyone.
I'll start this one. So as you know, I got involved because of science in the school district, and a couple of questions and maybe a quick comment on the PD to all administrators highlighting look for's in their science classrooms. Mm-hmm. In K-5, every classroom is a science, should be partially a science classroom and have space dedicated for that. And the principal's looking for that in the K-5s?
Yes, and some of the strategies were that we shared were essentially what is it that you should be looking for. And so, for instance, there's a driving question board technique that is part of the NGSS kind of implementation that really is a way to get kids inquiring. I did it with all of our principals, which was a lot of fun. And it's the easiest way to explain is you literally put a piece of paper up on the board, you'd introduce a topic and encourage kids throughout the time that you're doing that to put driving questions, things that they're thinking of on that board. And so it becomes sort of a centerpiece for a unit. And so you can kind of continually go back to that driving question board to investigate, all right, where have we gotten to the answers of these, or where are we on our investigation here? And so that's just one example of one of the, again, look fors, which is a hot topic or term within education, but really what it is that would, that a principal would see within a classroom that's kind of implementing this.
And especially at the levels of like kindergarten through 3, these are when the children are most impressionable, and we could actually guide them somewhat towards their interests and be somewhat focused in trying to drive them towards science or math or English or history.
Those workbooks are important.
Right. When I was first elected to the board, I toured all the schools, and in particular, I was looking through, because I already had an idea, the K-5 classrooms and the decor of the classrooms. You'll see math posters, you'll see literacy posters, you'll see poems, but you won't see very many science. Because, and then upon inquiries, I found a lot of K-5 teachers they teach general subjects, and so a lot of them aren't comfortable with teaching science. I don't know how much that has changed.
So some of that has not changed. There is still an uncomfortability with teaching science at the K-5 level that I'm a science fan, I'm a physics guy, I taught high school physics. I used to bring up physics phobia as part of my lessons and kind of breaking through that. And some of that we still need to do with teachers. And one of the strategies that are possible tools to use that is a fan favorite, if you will, to engage both teachers in teaching it and make it a little more engaging and fun, as well as children, is called Mystery Science. It's a program that is through Discovery Education. And part of, again, what we'll be presenting eventually to you, I don't want to spill the beans yet, but is that we've been able to negotiate, even though we're kind of phasing it in over the next few years, if we do get into a contract with Discovery, they're going to turn on Mystery Science for K-12 for everybody in the district the day we sign that contract. So even though we are not potentially going to be involved, again, we'll get into the presentation next time, but there is going to be access, and we've already had access. Discovery's piloted this for us, so there are schools that are right now using it and finding it successful. Just again, kind of on a qualitative engagement level. So That is, and again, that also came through in some of the survey that I provided for the teachers after they saw kind of these different products. But again, I don't want to spill too much into the next time we meet, but we do have, again, a lot of engagement, excitement just around the teaching of science, kind of a good renewed effort there. And I appreciate the support kind of from you as well as the board and my bosses here. So.
And how closely do the three directors work together as far as like curriculum formation and as such? Because we've had most of the push. Okay, I guess it's pretty close. Most of the push in the world is around math and literacy, because yeah, they are building blocks. But science is also a building block, and it's a very important component. And I don't know if there's like, so we had reading across the curriculum. Perhaps we could have some sort of like maybe science across the curriculum, whereas if somebody's got like a book report throwing science, if there's a math report, statistical analysis of some sort of science data or something, just to sell it more across the district. Is any efforts like that going on?
On March 9th, I facilitated an overview of the PSAT, SAT, for all of the 712 teachers in ELA, science, and social studies. During that professional development, the text was a science text. The graphics were science. There was numeracy in the text. So an interdisciplinary approach for grades 7 through 12 will be promoted. So that just happened on last Wednesday.
Awesome.
Yeah, and there was great feedback from the science folk about that, which, and even just being all together in the same training was a good kind of on the same page feeling, especially for the 712.
Anything towards the lower grades in this area?
I was just going to add that we also meet together every other week.
Yep.
As a cohort, just.
I saw it on your face as soon as I asked the question.
Mr. Sokolovich, just so you are aware, this year is the first year K-5 teachers could actually write in their science book. Next year would be the first year every K-5 student will get a new book. And going forward, so some teachers are at different places with this digital interface. So to make sure every child has access to content and every teacher feels empowered to deliver that content, they're going to have the resource on their desk.
Awesome.
So I just want you to know that that's the big shift. So all those other years, children didn't have a book.
The other thing I can, the other thing I just share regarding, and again, this will be more for our next presentation, but the assessment piece that frankly, I don't have a whole lot of data to share with you right now is absolutely a part of our negotiations with whatever company we're going to get into, Discovery Education, knowing that we need to be able to produce easily accessible data on our students so that we can see these growth metrics and target where we aren't, et cetera. So I'm envious of some of the products that my colleague has here to be able to kind of pull that data, but I have confidence that in due time we'll be able to do that with our science learners.
And so basically to follow up on the original agenda, we really don't have enough data to figure out what the learning loss is from between point A and point B, especially since the changeover of the exam in 18 from whatever the heck it was before to the NGSS.
Mm-hmm.
So after COVID with no exams, so there's really no metric for us to gauge, but they are getting enrichments.
Yeah, so some of those efforts, we've got a partnership with Sacred Heart through Project Future. So they're in 5 of our schools pushing computer science. And it does kind of infuse some science ideas within there. We've got the Trumbull Nature and Arts Center has been great. They've reached out. They've done some both virtual, and I believe they've come into our schools to kind of share just some STEM themes, some of the life science strands at the younger grades. They focus, I believe, on just K-5. We've got some schools. I know Beardsley's partnered with the Discovery Museum. They've got students that are getting bused over there after school for some STEM enrichment. And then, we are still promoting, and hopefully we should definitely, ideally, knock on wood, be back in person for our science fair for next year. And so already planning timelines and things to make that a bit more smooth and just a better overall event. And it'll be my first kind of in-person one. So I'm excited to see some of this all kind of happen.
Awesome, thank you. Ms. Baptiste Perez?
He didn't have a book.
I told you we're making systemic
Big change.
changes that,
Yeah, and what we will eventually present to you is a plan that ensures books every year for our.
we had a book, you just couldn't write it. So that's what we're saying. We're trying to, this is the footings, not even the foundation.
Recycle the book every year.
As-
It's terrible, yeah.
Okay, so some of my questions were answered as we went along in the slides. We're going to have a cohesive book that's going to be used through K through 5 starting next year. So that's fine. It's good to know that there is a stigma amongst teachers to teaching the science in the field. So I feel like my first question I jotted down is almost not there, but I will ask it and probably focus it just more on a high school level. What percent of Bridgeport science teachers actually hold a degree, a science-related degree? Not a bachelor's of science, because you can get that in human relations, but
To
science
my
degree.
knowledge, the state certification requires an undergraduate degree in the subject they're certified. So for our science certified teachers, I would say 100%.
Okay, just
That's a
Just,
valid question.
didn't know. So
Yeah, no.
I mean, I thought there was a book, so I couldn't make an assumption.
Gotcha.
Nope, you kind of addressed that question, the book question. I have a general question. It can actually be applied to math and other areas. It was mentioned about having a lead teacher in the particular fields. In science, is there a lead teacher at every school that's available for science?
Not right now.
And even though it's not right now, I'm going to assume that is a goal we're going to work towards
Absolutely.
to have. But also for areas like math, where there is a lead teacher and there's a development of a, I put air quotes, a bank of skills available to share with new novice teachers. Is that something that could probably be shared district-wide? If we're going to have a system where every school is using the same book, my thought is if lead teachers are creating something to help new teachers in one particular school, it'd probably be helpful for a new teacher in another school, especially just thinking sharing the wealth. So I don't think it probably exists yet, but it's just a comment that I think that would probably be something good to have.
The lead teachers are in place this year and we're expanding next year. But this is one of the problems with federal money running out, that the stipends that we're affording to keep this stable of individuals as lead teachers will dry up when the federal dollars dry up. So the incentive is, hopefully they would like to continue in that role, but the monetary incentive will go away.
And that's why to bank all their knowledge ahead of time.
Well,
So to your point, we have created a math department website where we have areas where lead teachers, and actually we had coaches at one point in time, they provided some of those resources that they're using in their classroom. We also have videos of some of their presentations, as well as some of the presentations from Greg Tang, and so teachers can go in there and enrich their knowledge in different areas. And as we develop curriculum, or as we prepare sessions, we utilize some of those resources so that they know where they are, and so that they see what they look like and they feel, and they continue to get excited about, oh yeah, I'd love to use that. And then if they come up with something, we usually put it up on the website. Now it's getting so overcrowded that I have to redesign it so that things are easier to find. But that's a great point.
And then my last question, just going back to there's science testing for only grades 5, 8, and 11.
Correct. And that's where a product that will be able to, kind of like Tito has access to internal testing to do it beginning in middle, end of year. We just don't have it right now, but again, big piece of what we're looking to adopt.
Yeah, I'm just going to piggyback off on your last question. Is it, because fifth grade seems a long time to pick up any deficiencies. Is it possible we could have some sort of interim assessment? I know I hate tests. I think we got too many tests. Going all the way to grade 5 without an assessment, it might be detrimental.
That's where the new product will provide those opportunities.
Oh,
It's built in, that's what he mentioned.
Yeah. And so we will be able to see growth in first grade on science, certain science strands, and even just pull out, again, where some of those weaknesses are to strategize and plan.
Awesome, thank you. Did you have any more questions?
Good. Nope.
Mr. Lombard.
Mine's from out of left field. Just wondering if it hasn't been too sensitive of a topic, has there been any classroom studies and projects on the coronavirus in any of the great sciences?
Yeah, I can share one from last year that was near and dear to me at aquaculture. We had a COVID-19 expo. It was a really great project. I'd be happy to share some details with everybody here. Students were put into groups. They were given a theoretical, I think, $3 million to spend on various aspects of kind of handling this pandemic, and they were given what those aspects were. I think they maybe even were able to choose. So some had kind of awareness and a public service announcement. They had, I'm dating myself now, it was about a year ago now, but a lot of great ideas. It was a very well researched project. I remember one group specifically, I still have, I think, the pamphlets on my desk at Aqua, but one group specifically put together a comparison of all the vaccines, and they showed what Johnson & Johnson versus Moderna versus Pfizer, and just again to kind of promote the education and awareness piece of it. So, and it was done again at Aqua. We had kind of a big display of it. We took over the conference room that you all usually meet in. We had, one group brought a tent and put a big display as part of theirs. So it was almost a COVID, fair expo at the end of it. And it was really great to see, again, what kids can do wrestling with a brand new topic that was, obviously very current and relevant. So, so that's the best example I can think of for you, Mr. Lombard, regarding, just my personal experience and what I've seen.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm sorry. You guys started to hear a second. Mr. Bennett.
Yes, I have some question. How many teachers you said is the team?
We got 241.
Oh, amazing.
And those double dip because I take some of the K-5 teachers are in there as well. So those aren't all science only teachers, if that.
Also, what is the percent of I know on your school, they go different kids from another town. Do you have the percent, how many kids come, we have it from Bridgeport or towns, like that?
At aquaculture?
Yeah.
So aquaculture right now is roughly 10% Bridgeport, 90% suburban, which is another piece that I'm working on. And we've gotten, thankfully, into every single Bridgeport public school this school year, which I cannot say for last year. So we are anticipating a higher percentage in our incoming freshman class.
Do you have like the percent, how many African-American, Latino, different country, stuff like that go?
I don't have it in front of me here, but certainly can provide it to you. Our data management department can pull that.
And this is this information or this qualify for the especially student survey. It's the same thing.
Sure.
Nothing changed. Everything's going to be the same.
Everything's the same.
No more questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that is all, Mr.
All right. Thank you. Here you go, Dr. Jenkins.
Thanks, Mr. Henry. Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Henry's offering a marine biology summer program to Bridgeport Public School students in grades,
awesome.
Which grades?
7 and 8. And that's Bridgeport students only. Again, another part of our recruiting efforts. I also plan on bringing all 7th and 8th grade science teachers to aquaculture for professional development in May. We have a district PD day then. I haven't talked to you about this yet, Dr. Jenkins, but This is the plan. Again, to wear both hats at once if I could, and promote science and promote a wonderful place to learn science for our Bridgeport Public School students directly to the teachers that, that are in the classrooms with them every day. So we are planning to increase that, that number. And appreciate everyone's help in the room to kind of promote aquaculture. We've got some media initiatives. We've got some other things going that we're hoping to get the word out. Aquaculture BPS on both Instagram and Twitter while we're at it. So I, again, appreciate everyone's support. Thank you.
That program you mentioned is entering 7th, 8th, or exiting?
Yes, entering 7th and entering 8th.
Oh.
We can make an exception.
No, he's going to work anyways.
And this is one of the things, number one, why Mr. Henry, was chosen to take on the responsibility of running the school, but also now having a full-time counselor at the school, which that was cut many years ago to part-time. The recruitment efforts suffered greatly because we always had a well-represented population of Bridgeport kids. And as the resource of the school counselor was diminished, the opportunity to get out into every school and present the program to students and parents diminished as well. And with that, we saw our numbers drop across the board, not just at certain schools, but at all of the high schools, because there was 3 buses historically that would come from Central High School, a bus from Bassick and a bus from Harding. And I know we're down to about 2 buses now from Central, not as packed as they were.
Right.
And the Bassick Harding numbers are embarrassing. So that's his task, and he's gonna, and his team will get those numbers back to where kids are getting exposure to a phenomenal program.
And one of the other recruitment strategies we rekindled, again, with the full-time guidance counselor, is bringing interested students from our schools to Aqua. So we've had my counselor has reached out, and she's gotten some interested counselors with large groups from descending schools. We've only organized, I believe, 1 or 2, but we've got students to our school during the middle of our day. We've scheduled them to do both a tour of our grounds as well as our floating classroom, which equates to a cool trip on the boat for kids. And then they get to come back, and then we send them back to their seventh school. So again, I learn a lot from the great staff at Aquaculture of kind of successful recruiting efforts that they've had in the past. And that's one that, gets kids excited. And then, how was school today? Well, I went out on a boat, and that's a great kind of conversation.
That new boat's going to be amazing when it arrives.
New boat will be another.
We're getting close.
Yes. Hopefully, for next school year, certainly, but May, ideally. But that is.
Should get an update Thursday at the school building committee. I believe they're going to be getting ready to do the water test.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins.
Literacy.
That was all, Mr. Bennett?
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Jenkins?
Literacy. I'm going to start with assessment data from an assessment called DIBBLES. DIBBLES stands for Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. We just started using this assessment last year, so we only have 2 years worth of data. Last year, we administered it to only grades K through 3. This year is the first time we're administering it to grades K through 8. We made the change to DIBBLES because the state of Connecticut thought it was a valid and reliable assessment to universally screen our children basic literacy skills. So as you can see, grade 8 did have growth from beginning of the year to middle of the year, only 7 points, but it's growth. In grade 4, a grade that's normally has not grown across the years, demonstrated growth. Students in grades 4 through 8 are assessed in their oral reading fluency, and they're assessed in their comprehension. Students in grades K, 1, and 2 are assessed in a variety of subtests, like knowing their letter names, the sounds, and decoding, as well as oral fluency. The scores on the screen represent a composite score, like a total of oral fluency and comprehension for grades 4 through 8, and a total of all the subtests in K1, 2, and 3. The purpose of administering this assessment is to understand their foundational reading skills with the hopes of closing the gap over the next 3 to 4 years and making sure children are reading closer to grade level or on or above grade level as they enter high school. This screen represents the composite score for students receiving English as a second language services. The numbers are not great, and on February 28th, I did take time to analyze just kindergarten data. We have 682 children that were assessed in kindergarten for their language proficiency. In kindergarten, there are 212 children who have no proficiency in English at all. Over time, I will continue to look at each grade level to understand the language proficiency of students. Students who are learning a second language in grades 1, 1st, 2nd, 5th, and 8th did demonstrate growth. I am looking across our district for a school with large linguistic diversity that has been demonstrating growth over time. Right now, I'm looking closely at Reed School to see if they will continue to make those gains. Currently, Reed, in regards to, say, the Lost Links assessment, in which I did not share that data, is one of our schools that have demonstrated greater achievement with a population of students learning English. This slide represents the subtest data for grades K through 3. DIBELS is a state-mandated assessment, meaning that the state of Connecticut requires all priority school districts, and Bridgeport is a priority school district, to administer assessments 3 times a year in grades K through 3. This is also based on legislation. So from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year with letter naming fluency, meaning that the children have to name a certain amount of letters within 1 minute, we had the percentage of children performing on that subtest increased in both K and 1. Phonemic segmentation fluency, PSF, we had really good growth in 1st grade, from 17% to 26%. Phonemic segmentation fluency is children just hearing sounds and words. It's a major predictor of students being able to read on grade level, not only in 1st grade, but in 3rd grade as well. So there's a lot of focus on teaching children to hear sounds and words. NWF represents nonsense word fluency, and the CLS represents correct letter sounds. The child is assessed to hear sounds in unfamiliar words, not dog and cat, maybe wong. They have to, sound out wog, wog. That really shows that they know their sounds. Nonsense words recoded correctly is when you say wog is correct letter sounds, wog, wog is recoding it. It sounds simple, but it actually requires that the teacher teach to stimulate certain parts of a child's brain. And the last subtest is word reading fluency. It's a sight word assessment. The only grade level that did not demonstrate growth over time was 3rd grade. And in a way, it almost represents a good thing, because teaching children whole word knowledge versus teaching nonsense word fluency can lead to significant drops in 4th grade. The words get larger. They have to read multisyllabic words. They need to be able to decode at the letter sound level. And nationally, 4th grade students nationally drop because we haven't done a good job nationally teaching children their letters and sounds in order to access them with fluency. Our teachers are currently engaging in professional development in grades K through 3, district-wide, on instructional routines aligned to each and every one of these subtests. That we have a partnership with a group called the Hill for Literacy. It's a nonprofit focused on literacy, training our teachers, whether they're beginning teachers, teachers that have been here a while, or teachers that have been in the classroom for 25 years or more. They're really learning how to teach foundational reading skills. It's a project that has demonstrated success in Connecticut. The Black and Hispanic Caucus actually launched in 2012 a study in districts that resembles our demographics. And because of the ESSER funding, we are able to take part in the success of that research by providing our teachers in grades K through 3 with professional development. Fortunately, Mr. Testani agreed to expand that professional development up to grades 4 through 6 next year. It is our hope and intention to train teachers in grades K through 8, not just in foundational reading skills, but in the ability to make sure our children are reading fluently and accurately and can comprehend in middle school.
Dr. Jenny,
Yes, sir.
sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Of course.
I'm sorry. Can you explain me what this means, LNF, PSF? I just, I see a lot of letters, but I just wanted, can you explain me so I can?
Letter name, fluency.
Okay.
So do you know A, B, D, C? Do you know your letters? Phonemic segmentation fluency
Okay.
is if I say cat, can the child go at?
Okay.
Or if I say at, can the child say cat? So even though it sounds simple, it's complex for a child.
Okay.
Nonsense word fluency is the ability to sound out a word that's not really a word, like wow. Can the child do that? Because if they can sound out a make-believe word, they'll be able to sound out a real word.
Okay.
And the last one, WRF, is word reading fluency. Can they read sight words within 1 minute, like the, said, it, like, does? Can they do that in 1 minute?
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
In similar to Mr. Planas, we administer the Smarter Balance Interim Assessment in the fall for grades 3 through 8. This is the percentage of students performing at or above or at near standard. I was able to compare 2019-2020 fall data to 21-22 fall data, and you see the decreases, different cohorts, and the impact of the pandemic, except for in grade 8. Grade 8 actually for ELA is a grade of strength and has been in previous SBAC administrations. On reading literary texts, the students in 2019-2020, 37% were at or near standard or above standard, and we had this time 48%. And on read informational text, we did not administer that at the time. In 7th grade, 45% were above or at near standard. 61% of our 8th graders were above or at near standard. I provide you with the PSAT data for 2019, 2020, and 2021. These are different cohorts of students in grade 11, and this is the percentage of students at each benchmark and the average evidence-based reading and writing score. The average score for the district has not changed over time, and the increase of students meeting benchmark is, minuscule. However, the gap between the state and the district almost remains the same as well. The challenge I find, or the greatest concern, is the district average is in the strengthening skills band. The goal would be to move students into the approaching band. I will say that we will be focusing on certain high schools to make sure all high schools are at least in the approaching or met band for their average scale score. In regards to SAT, this is a cohort analysis. So in March 2021, the children were in 11th grade. When they went to senior year in high school, October 2021, they took the test again. This shows growth in regards to the average score. It shows growth in the percentage of children that met, but I really am pleased to see that within that cohort, they had pretty good growth in their average score. They're closer to being in the approaching column for their average score. Mr. Testani makes mention to looking at it through a system, and the strategies that I've listed, I will explain. They're built on the concept of building, rebuilding, so creating infrastructure, creating structure in the district, supporting the instructor, and a focus on instruction. So I had mentioned in the memorandum that the infrastructure, all the leaders, students, family, community, have a shared responsibility with the curriculum implementation and a support on multi-tiered systems of support. So universally screening our students pre-K-8. The teachers are actually progress monitoring between the beginning of the year to the middle of the year, and from middle of the year to end of the year, we're progress monitoring to intervene at point of difficulty with children's reading learning. We're using data to make decisions. Should we focus on phonemic segmentation fluency? Should we focus a child on nonsense word? Every child has an instructional focus. Every child has a progress monitoring focus in grades K through 3. That will extend up to grades 4 through 6 next year. We're engaging in benchmark testing grades K through 12. That's why we implemented that PSAT. We don't have to. That's something we've opted to do as a team to understand students' growth over time. Creating the structure, alignment of the written curriculum with the taught curriculum and the tested curriculum. That's why we did PD on the PSAT. How can we get some of the elements of the PSAT into the classroom and then building those elements of the assessment into the written curriculum? We've provided extensive professional development to teachers. The teacher leaders have supported that professional development. We've hired elementary academic support instructors. We call them the easy teachers for grades K through 3. We're actually monitoring the effectiveness of the easy teacher's role in literacy through data. So we have a separate data set for the children that the easy teacher is supporting. Next year, we're working to build vertical and grade level team meetings. So it's not just third grade teachers meeting or fourth grade teachers meeting, but third understanding fourth, understanding fifth, understanding sixth. So, for example, with NGSS, they need to know if I don't teach this, the child's not going to be ready. So really looking at a vertical alignment. I mentioned to you the interdisciplinary collaboration. And then we moved to semester-based scheduling in high school during the pandemic, making sure teachers are supported in teaching children in an 84-minute block, making sure they have tasks that are meaningful, yet challenging and engaging. Instruction for literacy is focusing on foundational reading skills and close reading. And that close reading strategies will support science. And based on some of the math books I've seen, they're all words.
Yeah. A lot of the breakdown in math is.
We've purchased a variety of digital programs, Lexia. Every child has Lexia. Prior to pandemic, we bought Lexia for maybe 2,000, 3,000 kids. Every child in grades K through 8 has a Lexia license. Lexia supports not just foundational reading skills, it supports comprehension and grammar, Greek and Latin roots. So every child has access. We have Actively Learn, and for social studies and ELA. Reading Wonders is the core ELA program for K-6. Actively Learn is 7-12. Study Sync is middle school. They're similar companies, just different names. We use Khan Academy as a tool for mathematics. And we just purchased Reading Plus for the high school. The students are in the process of taking the baseline assessment. We will be able to understand the high school students' fluency as well as their comprehension level, and we'll be able to provide support to close the gap in preparation for standardized testing and to access curriculum more effectively. Approach, again, interdisciplinary instruction, focused on literacy and numeracy across all content areas. And we will be running our early reading success summer school this year. Lexia, there's a program we're also launching. We launched it in preschool, not up here. It's Footsteps to Brilliance. Every pre-K 3 student will have access to Footsteps to Brilliance. And these programs can be utilized at home. So next year we'll have a big push on family engagement around literacy. That push has started, but systemically across the district.
If you remember from the presentation, the Footsteps, the nice part about that, it doesn't need to have Wi-Fi connectivity at home. And as I sent to you guys, I don't know if you saw the email, the work being done in a short period of time is being featured through Footsteps because of the nature that we've been, the students have really taken off utilizing the program and the successes that in the data they're gathering for us. So it's pretty exciting to see our youngest learners getting ready to come to kindergarten much more prepared than they have been in the past.
Awesome.
Do you want to know the challenges?
Let's pause for questions for a minute.
Okay.
And then we'll get to Mr. Lombard.
I'm going to wait to see the challenges. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Baptiste Perez.
I mean, we've had books though, right?
Yes, we have books. They have books every year.
I could see myself recycling some of the questions that I've asked regarding math towards reading.
Yes.
I do see the growth. The chart used is interesting. My personal preference is the other graphs that was used in math, or just a personal preference, because it just shows how stark and maybe more people are just familiar with bar graphs. Just that's the way I read, right? Yeah, no, there is still a lot to learn.
Yes.
The breakdown, I feel like I could read it every point for that I used during math, like the breakdown, the schools, the number of English as a second language. What are the breakdowns of those languages? Is it just Portuguese and Spanish, or is there other languages as well? You were here for the comments I had towards math. It's pretty much, it goes across the line, but there's more data to gather and therefore make those strides in reading and math. I have a general question that makes me old. Although they changed, yeah, it makes me old, because they changed the SAT. It's reading, math, and the writing is now accounted for with the test. So it's 2,400?
16.
It's back to 16.
Yeah.
It's back to 16?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, then I dated myself by going up, huh?
We were there.
Okay. No, because I was just mentally adding the numbers and thinking about when I was applying and thinking about college. The mental baseline was you have to break above 1,000.
Yep.
And just remembering what was shown in math. I mean, we can eventually get there, but I guess my mind is always so focused on the target goal and not necessarily the growth aspects to it. But yeah, everything I've said in math, you can kind of recycle it, just also because in the interest of time. I don't have any really substantive questions. It does seem like what's going on in math is aligned with all the subject areas. So I love the Lexia program, but that's from me as a parent perspective. So I think that's great that that's going to be available. The focus of this, and maybe I'm missing it, but is there any kind of like, aside from the SAT testing requirements in high school for literacy or reading, is it, again, I'm from a different state, so it's just, I'm comparing apples to oranges to a certain extent. But
The state got away from the CAP testing and are using SAT as the assessment for the state as well.
So that's
Connecticut.
high stakes assessment.
That is, it was capped before, but that was abandoned several years ago.
Probably, well, a decade
Yeah.
almost, where there was a period where we didn't even assess in high school in Connecticut.
this is a little bit off, but for students in the high school level who we are offering AP, there's AP English, and is there data available on that and
Yes, it is.
preparation as far as like the grading? I don't think the grading has changed for the AP test, or am I that old?
No.
Okay,
1, 2,
good. Huh.
3, nope, that's the same.
Yeah.
Safe, okay. Yeah, I think that would be something to kind of look into, but I know not all students have access to the same AP tests, but I think that would be interesting to look at. But that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Can we back up to the benchmarks? Can't recall which one. This is to the beginning of the benchmark. Yeah.
This one? Or-
Next. All right, it seems to me, it seems counterintuitive that we rose from the fall of 19 to the fall of 21 by two percentage points. It's telling, and we also rose in approaching.
Right.
And I guess we would have to roll. Is there any particular reason we could put our finger on why? Is it because our kids with more in front of the computer, or just had more time to study, or because it seems counterintuitive that things would rise during that time?
Well, I mean, I think comparable to other districts similar to ours, we did a really good job engaging kids during the pandemic. I mean, we've been, as you know, we've been recognized at the state level for the engagement during the pandemic compared to our districts with similar demographics. So I also think the implementation of some of the resources that we do have that kids are actually utilizing. We monitor not only, we monitor usage of these programs this year that we've never done in the past to make sure that they're, what we're purchasing and what we're putting in the hands of kids is being actually used, and so we can measure whether they're effective or not. So I think the Khan Academy is an effective tool, and kids enjoy using it. And I think that's contributing during the pandemic help kids that would normally have just dropped off.
I just thought it was like, seems to be an outlier. If we can put our finger on what increased, I mean, we still got a ways to go, but those numbers are going in the right direction, even in light of the pandemic. And as far as the percent strengthening the skills, what's the metric to measure what's the strengthening the skills? If they just go up by 5 points?
Right, if they go up by 5. And most recently, we started looking at difference between the growth from PSAT 10 to PSAT 11. And when students don't make growth from PSAT 10 to PSAT 11, at least we have a chance to intervene in preparation for the SAT.
Right, and then they're strengthening up to, where is it closer to? What's the average point? The average percentage that they strengthen their skills from year to year, do you have that offhand? Like, is it like maybe from 180 to 200 or 200 to 300 or, well, that's a big gap. Okay, that's all the questions for there. I have one more question. I forgot what it was. It'll come to me. Mr. Benahan, do you have any questions?
No question, but a little comment that we had to be careful. See the change of 2019, 2021. You see, so we have to look in the numbers.
Yes.
You have to be careful. We don't want to go drop so badly, be on top. That's all.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, I got it. To the ELL slide. If you can bring that up. And the one just prior to it. Okay, all our students, right?
Yes.
Is that inclusive of the ELL
Yes,
numbers
that's
embedded?
inclusive of the ELL
I'd be interested in finding out if the ELLs are pulled out, what our assessment is of native English
Right.
speakers, if it would, what that would do to the percentages.
Especially children who identified as not proficient, meaning they have 0 English.
Right.
And I had made the example of kindergarten. I know that there are 212 kindergartners that are not proficient.
Right, because that'll essentially raise the first percentage across the board and give us a better picture of, because I think we're probably better able to manage our native speakers and their progress than our non-native speakers and their progress, especially when you're talking about grade level, because you can't come in 6th grade from another country with another language and be proficient in the English language in 1 year.
Well, and not only that, a lot of the kids that do come from certain parts of the country are coming with large gaps in their native education. But this has been, a focus of mine and ours now is to really strengthen our ESL program. Our numbers are growing, as you've all been reported, and it's a priority to make sure that kids graduate able to be successful. Some of our programs have historically failed our kids, and now we're looking at restructuring and refocusing. We brought in partners with UCLA Northeast to provide professional development and training, not only to our TESOL and bilingual teachers, but also our regular ed teachers, so they can support those kids in the classroom. So it is another area of focus. I mean, we have a lot of things we're focusing on, with a small team and a lot of planning. I think we are growing, and that's encouraging.
Right. If possible, if we could get the data disaggregated from ELL and native language speakers across all disciplines, because I'm sure it will have an effect to all disciplines. Because when you're trying to catch up in English, you're not going to be catch up. If we could get that disaggregated to.
You have to also remember there may be former L students who have exited that are also in there. So they're not native language speakers, but they've acquired the language acquisition skills to now that they're no longer testing. So there's a lot of those kids that have been with us and have acquired.
So what would be a fair disaggregation to?
Oh, we only can go by what you just asked for, L's and non-L's. Whether they were L's at one time and no longer are is not.
Okay. I still keep that in mind. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Benahan.
I have a comment. Dr. Jenkins, it looked like a fourth grade had also set for that eighth grade. But do you have a feedback why the reason for grade from the principals or somebody, why they have more? They told you feedback why the reason is more to set for that eighth grade?
I guess I wonder over time about maturity. I wonder about developmental, growth. When I was a middle school principal, seventh grade, developmentally, typical seventh graders go through a lot of change, physical change, emotional change, the cognitive development. So seventh grade, in my experience, has always been more variable because they're not just growing academically. Eighth grade, they seem to be a little more settled. And just talking about developmentally, the child.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jenkins.
You can continue. Thank you, Ms. Dr. Jenkins. Yes,
Just some of the challenges, accelerating schools with 2 or 3 group risk factors. And their research shows this. If a school has a lower SES population or socioeconomic status, if a school has high rates of low performance over time, in a school with large populations of students with language differences, those schools are harder to accelerate, and research shows that. There's 20 years of research. So as an example, Discovery Magnet may not have any of those factors, so that's why their performance is the highest in the district. A Howland school may have a history of low performance, but they've been able to break through and they're making some gains. But Howland isn't identified in EdSite. This is a database from the state as a school with low SES. Their SES is a little bit higher based on where the school is located. So that's why when I'm looking at data, I'm looking at schools that may have all 3 and what's making them a little different. So our magnet schools, they don't have that mobility. If they move from the north side to the south side, they get on a bus to go back to the same school. So all of those variables play in. So some of our schools may have 2 of those factors. Some of our schools may have all 3. Some may have 1, and some may have none. So that's one of our challenges, is creating acceleration when you have all 3. And making sure we have ongoing equitable supports based on school and student need. For the first time, 3 of our high schools have SIG improvement grants. They've never had. 3 historically underperforming schools. Those 3 schools affect the average. So when they don't have money, can we sustain the growth? We're going to make growth with those high schools. But without equitable supports, are we going to sustain growth over time? And then our greatest challenge is demonstrating growth within cohorts for PSAT. Each and every year, we got to show growth. And I do know that means that the instruction has to improve over time. So that making sure we do that, that's the challenge. Not that we can't, but it is the challenge. So teachers, when that group is different in front of you, you know how to respond. Different group, you know how to respond. Different group, you know how to respond. Growing kids in a cohort is easier than growing someone whose needs are different in every cohort. So we have to get better at looking at that cohort. Oh, what's that cohort's need? Okay, we have to do this, this, and this. So it's almost like pivoting. They have to pivot better. Does that make sense?
I have a question. When you were identifying where there may be schools with all 3, 2 out of the 3, I would be interested in seeing that as a board member, because when there's opportunities that come, whether it's for a specific grade or if it's an outside program looking to sponsor a program at a specific school, one that was on our agenda but wasn't discussed is about promoting students to become authors. It's kind of like the baseline understanding of it. And I think writing, planning out those thoughts may be helpful for schools with all three if there's not a partnership with a particular school in mind. But knowing that information is really helpful as far as like additional challenges those teachers in that particular school may face, that if everything is bunched together, we don't see. And so, you know, that's part of my push for just seeing things a little bit more spread out and not so high level where the underlying factors are overlooked.
Knowing now like some of the expectations you want to graph versus the numbers, understanding the different demographics of the school, then information could be presented that way. Just to say, I took what was written literally. It said the latest available data. So, because we have data.
Yeah, I'd be interested in bringing it back after we got the state metrics in and then doing a comparison pre-pandemic to now and seeing where we are in all the same disciplines. Well, I guess science is still going to have the same issue.
They're going to have a book next year.
Not again, but the big data goes up. The data's messed up for science because the test switched a whole big shift 5 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that. And then there was a practice test and one that didn't count, optional, and it was like a whole. Okay, question? Joseph Lombard.
No question.
Calvin guy, don't have any further questions. Mr. Bennett. Okay, thank you. Now we do have one more item on the agenda. I don't know if anybody got energy for it, or it's something that may.
Well, if you want to just be really quick on it.
Yeah, because there's going to be something that's ongoing, I guess, if it's something.
Yeah, I mean, just if we are going to take a look at the possibility and embark on this journey, because I think it's going to be quite a journey. It's not going to be, several months. It could be a year or two. But just some things to think about, talking to a colleague that recently went through this. It took a little over a year. There was some conferences that were attended by district personnel. They also leaned on other districts that had gone through the process of considering and finalizing bell time changes, start times. Obviously, gathering of research and support of the change is a key component when you're presenting the information to the public and to the community. They did partner with a research firm that helped a neighboring district, so they were already familiar with the demographics and the community itself, so that was helpful. Incorporating the transportation vendor, that is going to be very critical to see if there are going to be any challenges and any monetary impact of doing it. Initially, We Transport doesn't think so, that if we were just doing a simple shift, but I'm not sure if that's what's going to be the final outcome. Presenting multiple options it was important. So what they did was they narrowed it down from the current to 3 options that were looked at, and pros and cons were obviously presented, and families were able to weigh in on those 3 options. Putting together some focus groups that include teachers, building administrators, board members, district administrators, parents, members of the community itself, to consider all the various options. There's just some of my notes. Meeting with faculty and staff, that's going to be and present the scenarios that are developed by the team to receive feedback, and just get that two-way communication is important. And then obviously the big one too is going to be engaging union leadership to share all the information before any final discussion at the board level is engaged in. So I think those are the challenges that we would have to encounter. And if the board is willing to take on that this journey, I'm more than happy to be part of it with you. I think it is something worth exploring. I think it really could be impactful to our community here. And I think we need to do what's best at the end. That's for children. And probably put aside some of the monetary impacts, because I don't think that should drive any of the decision making. It should just be something that we have to be aware of when a final decision is made, what that financial impact could be. But there is plenty of research to show that this is worth taking a deeper dive into. My recommendation would be that continue to have some discussions as to what are the next steps. And really the first steps that we must take. I'd be more than happy to try to seek out in the next couple of weeks some places to, and some information, conferences nowadays with, webinars and things like that we can participate in and start to gather some of the information that will be critical in deciding if we want to go down this road or not.
Because I'm looking at it, I'm glad you say it's the research bears out. I've been looking at the research for years, but I haven't had a teenage son for years, so I was really, you could read something on paper and see that that agree with the research, but you don't notice how possibly pressing it is. I know already got a preliminary plan that if he has trouble sleeping, if he comes home from school, he sleeps 8 hours after school, be up at 3 a.m. and we do homework then or whatever. Mm-hmm. Since I'm retired and I can do that, but not all students may be able to do that, and I have access to a parent that's going to be at home all the time.
Right.
So, because I noticed that every year he gets older, it's a little harder to get to sleep at a decent hour to wake up for school, and it's through no fault of his own. And I'm sure like the research says, this is something that's common among teenagers. And
and before you guys arrived, we were just having a conversation. This could be something that we look at as well, based on the fact that, the Senate did pass that daylight savings time would be embedded forever, and there would be no fallback in the fall, which could have an impact of kids, as we all know, standing at a pitch dark bus stop in the middle of the winter. So all of these things need to be considered.
Right. And when like you said, there'll be some options, like 2 or 3 options. Are we necessarily would be confined to just flipping the schedules on their head, or can we start?
I think we start
each cohort later.
I think we start fresh, because we may find that just flipping the two, the high school and elementary school, may not be enough. We may find that it's a flip and a shift. That was one of the things I think that was decided upon. The final decision from a nearby community wasn't a flip, but it was a shift. That I think was their final decision. I can double check. So the high school kids got what they needed, but then families with elementary school also got what they needed as well, by maintaining a later start than the high school, which also could be helpful to after school programs and things like that may service a little bit later into the evening, and could help parents that don't have to rush back to pick kids up from, by 5:30 or so. So, there's a lot of things to consider, but I can start to see what the first steps were and how we can engage that here in this, if you like.
All right, seeing as I might have a bias, I'd like to poll the rest of the committee members here. Mr. Lombard, what do you think? Is this worth exploring?
I have no information about this other than it's on the agenda. You're talking about pushing it later, but this is all.
examining school start times as, you know, a healthier,
In what direction? What are you saying?
providing maybe a later start
Later start.
in
Okay.
conjunction with, for high school kids.
Okay, see, I didn't know that, so thank you. I have no opinion at this point. I'm waiting to you present the research. I can make a decision. Thank you.
Perez?
Uh,
Baptiste Perez.
So high school students don't get to choose their schedule. So if I'm starting as a freshman, my schedule is set out. I can't say, oh, I want to take.
No, this has to do with the start and end of the school day, the time, the actual time of the day.
This still seems a little bit foreign to me because I understand the start and end of the day, but when I was back in my day, I got to choose my schedule, so I ended early. There was a period where I was done in high school by 11 o'clock, and that's how I worked after school to save money for college. So it's like
The only early dismissal opportunity now in this district is if you have fulfilled all your requirements in your senior year, but you would have to still be here for a certain period of time. With the new semester-based schedule, you could graduate in December, or finish in December and walk in June, possibly, if your parent agrees to that. But in terms of the start of the school day, through at least your junior year, you are starting at 7:53 here at Central High School or Bassick and Harding, and you end at 2:30. That is your day.
Whew, that's early. I didn't do that either.
Mr. Sokolovic, I would like to say that I'm definitely very open to discussion. If it's the entire high school system in the district, just changing its times, we have the right to do that if it makes sense. And I listened to the superintendent talk about the different constituents to poll and survey and discuss. If it's worthwhile to the circadian rhythms of our students and maybe our teachers and schedules and work, everything like that, absolutely, it's worth exploring. That's my position at this point. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's worth exploring. I may not be able to personally relate to it, but if it's going to better serve the community.
It's going to be a lot of work, so if we're going to commit to it, I mean, I could do some
That's why I polled.
Yeah, well, we could do some preliminary, but like I said, not something that we need more work, but if it's something that will benefit our kids, then I think it's worth exploring.
But what do you think?
I agree with what Mr. Lombard said, and it's like, Mr. Tony says a lot of work. You know, it's something that you have to have a process and follow everything, the process, step and protocol. So, so I don't know how you're going to be doing, start this year, or you're going to start, maybe come back, vacation or something like that. So.
Yeah, it's gonna be, I estimate probably about 2 years before we can get anything solidly done.
Probably.
So,
I would just ask for just preliminarily, maybe it was in the packet and I missed it, so I'm sorry, but just some of the basic, pros of this idea, overall, what's it really playing out to be? And maybe even some of the cons, just before we go to the next step of forming these exploratory committees and so on and so forth, just see if it even really has a lot of data behind it. So that's what I would request.
so I don't have it on the agenda today as an action item. I could flesh it out where somewhere we could, because it is a lot of work, and I do believe we should have board approval to move forward with the work, even a bigger step than this, and because it's going to take some resources and time and planning. So that should be definitely a board level decision on whether we go forward with the thing, which we need to gather facts. So for the next meeting, I guess we could gather together what it's going to take or whatever to just get done with some of the things you mentioned and make it an action item. And then we decide if we're going to present it to the full board once we see the scope of the work that's necessary and the research behind it.
Yeah, I can draw up kind of a roadmap of a lot of the bullet points that will probably need to occur. And you guys from that, probably as I was reading them, could come to the conclusion that it's gonna involve a lot.
And the why.
It may not, it may die somewhere along the way. You may figure out that there's no appetite for it, from the community or from, you get a lot of opposition from staff. Who knows, right? I couldn't even tell you. I did ask the bus company if we just wanted to flip right now. It is feasible, but I don't know if that's the final decision.
Right, yeah, and something could be explored.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Lombard.
I just would like to understand the why. Really, really, really understand, the big question, why? Like I know you didn't really talk much about it tonight, other than sleeping in or something like that, but really understand why, because so I could say, well, it's worth all that work and that effort. I don't really have a handle on that. I know today was just exploring it, just talking about it, but I think for, to have the bullet points of what would be involved, I want to know, well, why would we even do that one? So that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, you did. The nuts and bolts of it, Mr. Lombard, we'll have more information for the next meeting, but recent decades and decades of research show start times for teenage children definitely need to be later because their body's biologically hardwired to wake up and sleep at certain times.
Sure, and then why would we change, or why would other districts not change, and what, how does it fall for us? I'd just like to have that information. Even with those decades of research, some districts still aren't changing. So, what would be the reason to and not to, and so forth. That's it.
All right, we'll get there. We'll make it an action item this again.
Okay.
Unless anybody got something else to add on this subject? No? I guess we'll take a motion to adjourn right now.
So moved.
I'll second it, but I want to say thank you, Chair Skolovic, for organizing tonight's meeting and the topics, because I think it was really, really beneficial. It was a marathon meeting, but it was well worth it. And so thank you to everyone who presented. So, and I seconded the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night, everybody. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Henry says he'd like to talk a little more.
Good night, everybody. Take care.